What's up, guys? Jay the Joker Parent here with your second episode of the Last Laugh podcast here in my weeb cave, surrounded by all my nerdy things. I'm here to talk to you about the wonderful card we had last week at UFC 287. I went over, just some breakdowns of some of the matchups that I had, taken an interest in last week, and given some predictions and just some analysis on each fighter and each matchup. And I wanted to go over some of them today because wow, what a card this was. Like, you got everything you wanted. You got rising stars doing what they do. You've got comebacks, you've got finishes galore, you've got rivalries. All of it came out at one UFC 287 last Saturday. So let's break it down. Right, we're going to go over some things, and there's some things that today I'm going to kind of go off on a tirade about, and I think that we all kind of share this sentiment a little bit. Let me turn myself down just a little. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, too loud in my own ears. I'm going to go over just some things that we saw, obviously, maybe some setups and where I was wrong, and also just a concept that I think that all of us are kind of on the same page about, as far as fans, as far as fighters, even as far as officials at this point. Don't know what's going on with this. So let's get right into it. Prospects really shining through. There's just a few things I'd just like to go over today. And I have a few notes. Firstly, Joe Pyfer. Dana said it. Hey, be like Joe Pyfer. And I didn't highlight him before, because I thought he was up against a good test for a new prospect in Mearshart, I believe. And he came in there and in a capacity crowd in a card like that and just shined. That guy just did he looked very poised on his feet, very smooth. Not a lot of nervous energy from him. Everything had purpose in it. His striking was phenomenal. He forced his opponent to shoot from really far out. Ended up getting the finish against a quality opponent for somebody that's newer to the UFC. You know what I mean? Not newer to MMA or not a seasoned veteran, but for sure newer to the top level. That's definitely a good win for him to start, rolling. So congrats to him, because that guy looked damn good, and I am excited to see where he can go with it. We've seen his stand-up skills. Obviously, he's done that in his Contender Series. He did it with this fight. Hats off to him. Great job. This guy's definitely going to be somebody to watch, and I hope that he keeps the train rolling. I want to see, him be a little bit more well-rounded. Not that he didn't have like a masterclass performance, but you never know who somebody really is until they test their mettle. So I'd really like to see that for him. But great performance from that guy, and I just wanted to give a tip of the cap to him. Let's see. Okay, so going into a couple of the matchups that we talked about last week, Cynthia versus Loopy. What did I tell you? That's a great technical fight between two very, very good martial artists. Very evenly matched all the way through. Loopy appeared to come in a little bit stronger in the beginning. And really, not that Cynthia wasn't landing. She was. In fact, she was landing perfectly fine. I think that Loopy just had a little bit more pop on her punches early, and she was keeping everything kind of short and sweet and countering over the top. And I think she used Cynthia moving around or trying to escape and create angles to create her openings as she exited, and it was working at first. You started to see Cynthia start to pick it up, in the second and third round, and either way, honestly, all three rounds were very close. All three rounds were great, and at the end of it, I really didn't know who had won that fight, or it could have gone up. I'm not mad with the decision, but I did think that Cynthia did enough to win, and that might be personal bias. I'll completely agree to that. That might be that, but I just thought that in the third round, particularly, I thought it was 1-1 going into the third. Loopy took the first, Cynthia took the second, and then I think Cynthia just kind of poured it on, and maybe none of the shots she landed were super damaging, but she was scoring that whole round. You know what I mean? There wasn't much for Loopy coming on the other end, and she did stuff a couple takedowns, and I just don't know. I don't think I agree with that. And not that I'm like up in arms about it. It's not like that's a robbery. That's not a robbery in any regard. It's just a shame. You know what I mean? That's just a shame because and this one will lead me into like the next part, and you guys are gonna get mad at me for this tirade that I go on. Maybe not mad, but we're just gonna sidetrack here for a minute, and I'll get into it in a second. What the hell was that? What the hell was the 30-27 there? 30-27? Even in that fight, there was nobody in that fight that won all 3 rounds. Neither of them won all 3 rounds. That's ludicrous to believe. Watch that fight back. Anybody watch that fight back and tell me that was 30-27. What was that judge watching? And this happened at least twice on this card, man. And like, I'm going to go off. Let me just go off for a minute. Modern judging. I don't think anybody knows what we're looking at anymore. Like what? Like at least if you know you can't finish, so like in the old days, right? Or at least in the older days back when I first started, if you had a criteria of what the judges were looking at, if you knew you couldn't finish your opponent, at least you had these specific criteria to follow so that you knew and your coaches knew what exactly the judges are looking for and scoring in order to win this fight, right? Which makes perfect logical sense. But like it seems like today nobody knows what the fuck they're talking about anymore. Like even like we have no idea what we're doing. We have no idea what the judges want. I don't even think they know. I think that some of them are just there to collect a check, man. And this is where I get pissed off because this isn't a UFC issue. And for the people that go after judges or the UFC for the judging, it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with the state-run commission, which is it's a governing body. The UFC has to go through all of these people. Any promotion has to go through any state to do this. And instead of having like a real coach, you know how long it takes to become a judge? It doesn't take long at all. And you have almost zero background in it. You just take a course for a couple of weeks and then you're a judge. That's it. And like every time there's a bad call, it's the same list of people that's calling. It's bullshit. It's bullshit calls. How many times have we had a decision that's just gone, what the fuck was that? What was that? Why did that happen? You know what I mean? What are they looking at? They don't know, and we don't either. So like when you're prepping for a fight now, you have no idea what to prepare for. The only option in your head is if I don't finish this guy, I have no idea if I've won. And like that sucks, man. And like what I hear from people is well, don't leave it to the judges. Dude, what? What do you mean don't leave it to the judges? Do you know how hard it is to finish a human being? Not just like a human being, but a trained martial artist. Not just any trained martial artist, but martial artists on the roster of collectively the greatest hand-to-hand fighters in the world. Do you know how hard it is to just finish that person? It's incredibly hard. So no, not all the time are you going to be able to just finish somebody. That's what the judges are for. And instead of holding these people to the fire and saying you're screwing people out of their checks, out of their money, their families get less money, instead of holding those people to the account, we put it back on the fighter. And that's horseshit, man. We have to, our 2 jobs are to show up, make weight, right? And then fight and win. That's your job is to judge correctly and have a criteria that you're following. You don't have that. It's abundantly clear. And I'll give you an example. Petr Yan versus Aljamain Sterling, right? The takedowns and the control time were what won Aljamain that rematch, right? That's what won it. Okay, no damage done, which is the criteria they've set forward, right? If there's no damage done on a takedown, and then it doesn't matter much. You know what I mean? If you don't do anything with it, if there's no damage done, then it doesn't matter. So like he did that. Aljo took Piotr's back for 2 rounds and won that fight. That was how he won. Even though Petr had just many takedowns, it just didn't make sense. But that's what they said. The control time's what did it. Then flash forward to a fight that you probably didn't even mention, right? that you haven't even thought about, but it was Vince Morales versus Miles Johns, and I watched that fight, and Vince should have won that fight. Vince should have won that fight, but Miles with 3 seconds left in. Oh, fuck me. I'm gonna have to do this. Pardon me. I got this wrong. Um, what I meant is that in those moments when Piotr had takedowns, they said that he didn't do anything with it. And then the next time they contradicted that in the Morales fight in saying that Miles Johns, who secured a takedown with maybe 2 seconds left in the round, was enough to win a fight. So they go back, and for the point of what I'm trying to say is that they go back and forth about what they're looking at. One week it's takedowns with damage or what matter. The next week it's control time that matters. And there's no like up in the air about it. Do you get what I'm saying? Like there's no concrete thing ever. It's just state to state. And half of the time, they don't know what they're looking at. And then so going back to the state-run commissions, if you don't hold these people to the fire, they're just collecting a check. That's all they're doing. They're going, they get paid, guys. They get paid no matter what the call is. And that's the problem, man. That's the problem, is that these guys show up, they can score it however the hell they want with zero like accountability, zero. None. Zero accountability at all. Zero criteria for what they're looking at. And then they get a check for however many $1,000 per event they get, and they go home. And it doesn't matter to them whether or not they're screwing people out of their careers. That's what they're doing. You don't understand. This isn't boxing. You know what I mean? Like you could be 45-1, and that would be a great thing. But one loss in MMA is detrimental to your whole career. It changes how you go about things entirely. One loss can do that. So, like, for judging like this to have a 30-27, even though the call wasn't bad on the decision overall, this one judge could have changed the situation, could have changed the outlook of that whole fight. Could have been a draw, could have gone to Cynthia the other way if they knew what the hell they were looking at, but they don't. And they don't have a list for it. So when you're like, all right, so if I'm a coach and I go, all right, so what do the judges want? And they say it, and then they go for the opposite thing. Well, here's what the thing is with modern judging. No one knows what we're looking at any longer. That's it. That's really the long and short of that. It's appalling is what it is. There's so many inconsistencies with judging. There's so many, and again, it comes back to there's no accountability for them. Zero accountability for judges and throwing shitty calls. There's no appeals process as well. If you've ever known, there's no appeals process for fights that get screwed. Zero. You know why? Because it runs through the state. You have to appeal that to the commission, and the commission 9 times out of 10 is going to tell you to go fuck yourself. Because rather than admit that they're not doing their jobs right, they'll just push it onto fighters and say, don't let it go to the judges. Well, you know, if you just finish them, then everything, you know, I mean, it wouldn't be a bad decision. Or, hear me out, you could do your fucking job, man. And you could do your job correctly, and you can't. I admit not every call is going to be favorable. There's obviously going to, but there are some bad calls, and it happens more and more as time goes on. And if you notice, it's the same fucking people over and over and over again. Over and over. It's the same people. Every time there's a bad call. It's so bad now that even people hear certain names. Saul D'Amato. I'll just throw that one out there. He's terrible. Every time there's a bad call, guess who's there? Good old Solly's there. You get what I'm saying? And he gets what, $20,000 an event or some shit like that. These people are making a living off of it, and while they're destroying other people's careers and hurting how much they take home to their families, while they just get to sleep well at night, and that sucks, man. And it's on the commissions. That's my tirade about modern judging right now. Is that shouldn't have been a 30-27. And the reason why it's a 30-27 is either A, you're not paying attention, right? B, you have no idea what the fuck you're looking at. And C, you either really don't know what you're looking at, or there is no criteria, you're just winging it. That's what you're doing. It's fine, dude. It's just that most of us put in our entire lives to get in the positions we're at, and got to let you know at the top level, job security is not a fucking huge thing. Okay? Not a huge thing at all. You know? And to lose twice means you're on the chopping block. But y'all just don't care about that. This is the problem that I have with that, is that if we lose at the top level, there's no saying that we're going to keep our job the next day. I could wake up and be completely screwed because of someone else's mistake. You didn't do your fucking job right. That's not my fault. And if you don't do your job right, I should be able to appeal that immediately and ask you what the criteria was for the judging that you fucking gave, for the judgment you passed. And if you can't give me a clear-cut one that matches the evidence in the fight, then that's a no contest right there. That's you being incompetent. That has nothing to do with the fighter or the ability of the fighter to perform. Fuck you for doing that. That's terrible. And everybody knows it right now that all these judges are piss poor. Piss poor. They don't know shit about our sport, and they're 90 years old. And we're all tired of it because all we want to do is make a living. If just all we're asking for is literally just have a fucking list countrywide, sport-wide, that this is what you're looking at in North America or wherever. Any other continent you go to should just have a list. This is what we're doing. This is how it works. And this is what we're looking for. And that shit should not change. And that's it. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. I don't see judging getting fixed at all. Because again, you go back to, if you have to change the judging and how the process of becoming a judge is different, or how they remain or keep their jobs, or the accountability, that would imply that the commissions have done wrong. That would mean that they haven't done their job right. And heaven forbid any admit that they've been doing it wrong and that they've been screwing people. So I don't think we're going to see anything like that change for a really long time. I had a brain fart in the middle of that earlier, so pardon me. I figured I could save it. Misspoke, but that you get the point of what I'm saying, is that there is no accountability for judges on shitty calls, and the fighters would just sit there holding the bag, and that blows. So that was one that I didn't agree with. I didn't agree with the decision, but 30-27, or I didn't agree with the decision, but I don't hate it. But 30-27 means that at least one of three judges isn't paying attention. And, this happens more and more and more. And nothing is going to get done about it. And it's sickening, because this is people's careers. It's people's lives. Shame on you for phoning it in. Shame on you. That's all I have to say to you, because you know exactly who you are. And you'll probably never see this, but if you do, shame on you for just phoning in people's lives. But moving on. All right, I've gotten off my soapbox now. So going into what is easily the fight of the night. 100% the fight of the night. Kelvin Gastelum versus Chris Curtis. What did I tell you? I told you this fight was going to be, this is the sleeper fight of the night. I told you it was going to be that. Just two guys absolutely trying to hurt each other the whole time. It's amazing. It really is. That whole fight, top to bottom. Kelvin came out, you know what I mean? Looked good. Looked probably about as close to the Adesanya fight as he's ever looked. And, or has looked since. And bouncing on his toes, real in and out. He definitely kept Curtis at bay, and kept him guessing the first round. First round definitely went to Kelvin. But all three rounds were so close that, if it had been scored, maybe the other way. But it's pretty clear cut, I think, from everybody that I've talked to, said that Kelvin had one, Chris had two. Here's the problem with round two. So Chris starts to pick up speed around round two. An accidental headbutt happens as Kelvin's coming up. He ducks his head and he comes upward with his head, and I believe he hits Chris right in his chin, and that rocks him. and it drops Chris to the ground, and that changes the dynamic of that second round, I think, because you obviously have the flash knockout or the flash, in general, and Chris is covering up, and to his admission, he couldn't remember 30 seconds after the headbutt, so he was just kind of winging it, half conscious. Kelvin swarms, obviously, as he should. The ref didn't stop it. And, the optics of that made it seem like Chris was on the losing half of that fight. Even though he got right up, he got up, he got to the cage, got off, and then, to be completely honest, for the last minute or so, he teed off on Kelvin. Everything about that, until that moment in that round, was going towards Chris. And I think that headbutt and that drop in the middle of the round really did have something to play in the overall decision, because the third round was just all Chris. It was all Chris Curtis the whole third round. Kid had auto lock on, or auto aim, or whatever you call it, Call of Duty. He couldn't miss, and his body work is immaculate. Like I told you before, he was going to go to that well over and over and over to try and slow Kelvin down. Thankfully for Kelvin, he was very, very, very much in shape. So he was in shape more than he usually is. And, the cardio held up there for all 3 rounds. But Chris was hitting him with some smoke in the third round. And another. And it comes down to the scorecards. Now, as soon as I heard 30-27, I knew they were giving it to Kelvin. I knew it. I knew it in my soul. And that's another one. 30-27. Who, again, I just want to have a talk. Which judge said that? And let's all just have a sit down and say, why do you believe that Kelvin won all 3 of these rounds? Maybe two, right? 1 and 2, because of the headbutt and in the optics. I went into that. Round 3? This is a round by round thing. So that means you're judging them individually. So are you judging the fight as a whole when you're supposed to do it round by round? Is that what you're doing? Because that still doesn't make sense either. So again, I just have some questions. What about that fight for either side was 30-27, my guy? Let me know. Please tell me, what do you know that I don't know? Just tell me what it is. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Chris ends up losing, taking the fall to Kelvin, and a great return fight from him. Again, I love both of these guys, so I never wanted to see either of them lose. I never do, and I always root for either of them. It was hard to be in the middle of that. Chris being like a brother to me, and Kelvin always being a good guy. And I haven't gone through a ton. I watched Kelvin going through his knee surgery, or his knee rehab at the PI when I was there, and we would talk, and that's where I met him. And it's really just super cool to see good people put on such a performance between each other. They're both kindred spirits, and they're both not malicious. Chris is a little more petty, but it sucks to see Chris lose like that, because I do believe that he won that fight. But both fighters, at the very least, can hang their heads. Well, not hang their heads, but hold their heads high and know that they both of them proved very much that in the middleweight division, both of these men are top 10 level fighters. Even if Chris doesn't have the number besides his name, he definitely, and Kelvin got a good bump in the rankings, from what I understand. Both of these men proved that they deserve to be in the top 10, top 12 at most. And as much as it sucks to lose, and Chris is the worst about losing, I think he knows that. I think that he gained more stock in this loss than he thinks. And I do believe that we see Chris Curtis back in there in the next couple of months, trying to get that one back. So congrats to Kelvin. Head high, Chris. You're the man. You'll get back in there, and that you belong. Both of you have earned your stripes, and congratulations to you on Fight of the Night. You both earned those bonuses for real. So, all right, moving on. It's time. Raul versus Christian. I could take the low road. I could, and I won't. Honestly, I could make a bunch of jokes I've already done that on my social media. But what I said came to pass, right? Christian's strategy wasn't unlike my own going into that fight. It was just the sequence that he got past that I didn't. So, what did I say? He goes for the single, tries to hop on your back, which he definitely did. Raul got that down, right? And the only thing Christian did different than me was that he stayed patient and he waited, and I rushed. And from there, the dominoes just fell. Raul was exposed on his feet. I told you that was going to happen. I told you it would happen eventually, and it did right then and there. It appeared at certain times that Christian definitely had the finish and chose to continue mauling Raul. And not that I wish that upon him at all, but I do think that he needed a little bit of humble pie. Christian served him up a big old plate of humble pie, baby. And, at risk of sounding a hater, I think that he needed it because I think that boy's got a bunch of yes men around him and tell him that he's a world killer. And, and that's reflecting in how he's training and how he's acting. And I really hope that he could take like 2 years off, man, and be 20 years old and still reach that goal that he's got. He has so much time. So I if he can manage to take as much time as he can off and work on his striking and just develop, just grind, dude, just get better, just get better. You've already made history, I don't see why you need to, but I would really, if I was him, I would go back to the drawing board, maybe keep my mouth shut for a little while and just, work on things that you clearly need to work on, which is your stand up, just not good, and that was apparent, and Christian just pieced him up on the feet, as well as on the ground, tired him out on the feet, couldn't get him down. What happened? Couldn't get him down a couple of times, right? And then it looked like he broke a little bit. He started to secede position. Second and third round, Christian takes his back twice. Again, probably could have finished that at any point, but continued to beat on him instead of just finish, which is almost worse. So, just like I said, Christian Rodriguez, very good, very sharp. Not a lot of people giving him credit that he deserves, and like I said, when my matchup came about, Christian's in the same seat. It's you win, you beat an 18-year-old. You lose to an 18-year-old. Has nothing to do with the kid's skill or the fact that he's better than 90% of the world in anything in this particular thing. It's everything to do with that he's 18. And even though it was a good plan and a good win, he won't get the flowers. But Christian, that was a great performance, and you did the right thing. And I can't wait to see what's next for him, obviously. And I hope that Raul takes this opportunity to be more humble. And, that's coming from me. So to know that you're not the biggest and the baddest at 18. And there's a lot of people that have been here a lot longer than you that have no more tricks than you. And I appreciate the confidence. And you should always believe that you're going to be a world killer. But pride cometh before the fall, if I may. You say to be a religious person. So if that's the case, then remember that pride cometh before the fall. And I hope that you take that to heart. So I hope you come back. I hope that he's in great shape. He comes back and he goes back to his winning ways, and he's sure to be a star later on in his life. So better luck next time, kid. All right, moving on. Holland versus Ponzi. I was completely wrong about this. I was completely wrong about this fight entirely. Holland looked damn good. His striking looked great, and Ponzi couldn't get in on him, and he moved his feet really well. He got the finish. What a knockout that was. Real good one. Ooh, keep it in my thing. What a knockout that was. I really didn't have much for that fight before. I wasn't very much interested in it, if I'm honest. But it was definitely entertaining. I went into it with a low expectation. And it surprised me. They put on a good show. Holland looking real sharp there. So, unfortunately, we can't see him and Jorge Masvidal fight in the ring, but maybe we'll get a TMZ video of them fighting in a parking lot somewhere. Hopefully it's with Kevin Holland dressed as Batman, because that's his alter ego in real life. He just saves people in his regular time. Actually, before UFC 287, he actually saved an entire litter of kittens from a burning tree individually. So that's how he gets his spirit for wins. Is he just goes off and commits acts of vigilantism and and super heroism, and then he comes and he whoops professional martial artists asses. So I got nothing for that. But Kevin looked really good in that, and I'm glad to see him win. And motivated Kevin Holland is something nice to see. That's a nice. I like seeing motivated Kevin Holland. As much as I love the big mouth shit, I love all the big mouth shit. I really do. But I just feel like when he's motivated, he's on it, and he wants to win. That guy's so entertaining to watch. Ponzi's always fun to watch. He just didn't have a good night. I only really got stuff for Kevin today because I don't think Ponzi showed up as well. Either that or he did, and Holland just canceled him out. And it was, he had such a good performance with him style wise that it was just a no brainer. So Kevin Holland, great finish. Very, very entertaining fight. Another fight I was technically wrong on. And I ate my words. Not really that I even predicted it, but I did kind of harp too much on Adrian Yanez in the last podcast. Not because I don't like Rob Font, right? I've trained Rob Font for a really long time, or that I think that he's lesser. I think it's more recency bias for me, having seen Adrian, and Rob had been away for quite a while. Adrian came and he did his thing. They came out in the first minute and started to do his thing, and then Rob with his straight punching, like I said, really kept him at the end of things. And the thing that Rob Font does, and the New England Cartel is very good at this, but Rob Font particularly is very, very good with that reach. Do you know what I mean? He's real good with it, man. Like, and when you get too close to him, if he can throw his extension, you'll notice that he grabs people's heads really well with those really long arms, and it sets up his elbows and his knees. Rob Font has a very underrated clinch game because it's not really traditional. He's not really super tight with it, but as soon as he grabs people's heads, you notice he hits an elbow, a knee is coming, and it's almost like a cue, kind of how like you hit I get hit, I hit with the other hand. You know what I mean? It's like a cue. And what Rob did well up to the finish was every time Yanez came in, he put his hand on his head, got his distance, good 1-2s, good boxing overall. He looked great overall. But the finish came at Adrian pressed, right? Adrian pressed real well. And Rob put that one lead hand on top of his forehead, right? As he did that, Yanez tried to back away. As normally people would do, it's your natural reaction to try and back away from that. He probably thinks he's getting in a clinch like he had done a few times prior to that, right? Font, if you watch, Font gets him, Yanez exchanges, and then Font would grab his head. Rob would grab his head, and then Yanez would kind of pull out and get away, kind of like that, right? And so as that in the finishing sequence, as Yanez comes in, right, Rob does the same thing, except as Yanez is exiting this time, there's a big hook. And now Rob doesn't even have to look if he doesn't need to, because he's touching him with this hand. If I can touch you with this hand, I can touch you with this hand. And so while his hand is still on Yanez, he can just track him and just bring his hands together. Right down the middle, right to the chin with a solid rear hook. And that wasn't by coincidence. That was set up, and it was a really good sequence. And hats off to Rob for that, because I know he's been out for a while. He really wanted to win. Coming off, he has a baby. Congratulations, Rob Font, on your new baby. To get a win like that after being so gone for so long and having some complications and all these other things. That was a damn good fight. For as long as it lasted. And I think we'll see them two fight again. And I don't think that Yanez will be – I still believe that Yanez will be a top 10 135er in the next year or so. And if anybody considered Rob Font a gatekeeper in this fight, or a gatekeeper to the top 5, they don't understand who Rob Font is. Rob Font was number 3 at one point. This isn't a man that, will be deterred by losses. And this isn't a man that loses and keeps losing. He always finds a way to win. He bounces back really well. So, who's next for Font? Damn, I would really like to see. I'd like to see Font Cheeto. That'd be nice. I'd like to see, maybe even Dominic Cruz, or he said he wants the Figgy fight. I think that's a good one. I'd take that. I'd love that fight. Figgy versus Font. That's a good one, man. That's a good one. And I think Font takes that. I think that as good as Figgy is on the ground when he's active, you know what? I shouldn't even say that, because I think that Figs looked great in his last couple of fights too, especially with Moreno. It's all against the same guy. But I do think Rob is the superior overall martial artist in that matchup. And I think that if that did happen, that's great. But I would like to see him against a top 5 guy, O'Malley, or let's see, Marab maybe. But Marab's up for just I have another good box, Cheeto or O'Malley. I think those are good 2 matchups for Rob, and I think those are 2 good ones. Cheeto beat him the first time. It was a good loss for Rob, but if you really watch that fight back again, Rob was landing and winning, and he just wore it a little bit better. So I think he wanted to get that one back. I think he can perfectly beat Cheeto. But time will tell. But taps off to those 2 men, because that was a great fight for as long as it lasted. Beautiful finish from Rob Font. Congratulations on the return. The New England Cartel keeps delivering, and I expect them to do that until the end of time. So great job from the captain of the New England Cartel. Moving on. Gilbert and Jorge. I think I might have less for this than I did Kevin Holland and Ponzi. Jorge didn't come to win that fight, I don't believe. He just didn't look good. He's lost a step for sure. I am surprised, though, he went all 3. I did think that he was going to get finished, and he held out. And, I think that Gilbert should have finished that fight. I don't think that with not a finish on Jorge, you can get a title shot. And he's asking to be released from the company because of it. That's real tough, man. The UFC doesn't really do well with shit like that. But anyway, back to the fight. The fight itself was good. As soon as Gilbert got the takedown, I kind of understood the tail of the fight. Again, man, go back to what I said last time. If you say the word retirement 2 days before your fight, you're already retired, man. You're just trying to get through there and get the check and then leave. And I feel like that's really what happened here. I think Jorge checked out. He had planned to retire, and I think that losing helped him retire. Had he won this fight, I think he would have kept going, and I don't think he would have retired on a win. So I think that's probably the best story for him in Miami, and he's a millionaire, and he has a really, really great story, and it's nice to follow. The fight itself wasn't his best performance, but I do believe that he was really just looking for a way out. He's got his own promotion now. He's got his own businesses. I just think that there's more to his life now than fighting. And the whole, if I lose to Gilbert, I'm leaving, was just me hearing I'm leaving. So hats off to you, Jorge. Great career. You know what I mean? Street Jesus and the flying knee and super necessary. And you gave us a ton of great moments. And I hope that, you do well in your next part of your career. Yeah, but this fight went about how I expected. I'm pretty sure it went the same for everybody else, to be honest. Gilbert got the takedown, was really dominant on top. And that was really the tail of it, Not really much to go about on the feet. So that was really the co-main event. Probably the least exciting of all of the fights, but still a nice moment to have with Jorge at the end. And wow. Again, I was wrong so much in this. This is one I did give a prediction on. I did pick for the main event for Alex Pereira to beat Izzy. I didn't say how, but man, was I wrong. And this sequence was great. It was beautiful. I can't remember. It was a few days. We're a few days removed, so I believe it was the second round where the finish happened. And if you look back at the extra fight, and I think they have pictures of it, it's the same sequence that dropped or rocked Alex being the target in the first fight. And it always seemed like they were kind of setting that up, that one sequence again in this fight than they were the last fight, where Alex started to back Izzy up against the cage, really used that big dominant presence and push him back and start to unload on the cage a little bit. And he starts swinging big old meat hooks to the body, coming up, big uppercuts, big motions. And you can see as, Izzy's trying to wade through it, he's looking at his target and he unloads a smooth jab and then a cross right over the top of Alex's left shoulder. And it hits him dead on the ear, right where my ear is. And if you don't know, the 3 buttons on your head to knock you out are your jaw, right? Your jawline, your temple, and right behind your ear, right? It's where your body just goes and you're done, right? What that is that it's basically there's so much concussive force or trauma to your head that your brain just switches off to actually protect it from taking that damage. And Izzy placed same spot as he did the first time. Over that top of that shoulder, right over here, hit Alex right on the ear or right slightly behind it, put him cold out, right? The first one, maybe he was a little off, maybe might have been an inch, but he placed that right hand so perfectly, he shuts the lights off against a much bigger guy. It seemed like a very, very practiced sequence and something they had studied over and over and over again from the first fight. That's how accurate it was. That's how clean it was. And I was always the first person to kind of denounce Izzy as one of the greats, as one of the greatest of all time. Because I'm an Anderson Silva fan. I grew up with Anderson Silva, and even to me, there hasn't been someone that held the cage presence that Anderson did, as well as the title defenses. He's got just far more, But Izzy's creeping there. I would say that Izzy's definitely the second best middleweight. That's guaranteed. That's not, and he's well on his way to becoming the greatest 185er to ever grace the cage, from his showmanship to how he finishes. And the thing about his legacy that I believe he needs to is to go after this. He went there and he wanted to fight. And that's the Izzy we all love. The Izzy that came up, the kid that was knocking people's heads off. You know what I mean? Not the guy that jabs and kicks in circles. And I get that when you're at the top, someone has to remove you from that. But to assert your dominance that way, do you know what I mean? Your legacy will be led that way. And I think that he is creeping up on the Anderson Silva level of mystique or he's living up to that kind of presence, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? He's living up to that hype where he's finishing guys that are bigger than him. He had the comeback story, a real champion, comes back and wins anyway. And, that whole storyline. And, yeah, I really do. I do believe that now that as a guy that would deny that prior, I do believe that he's the second best middleweight still two. I won't let go of Anderson, but I do believe that he is the second best, and eventually he may dethrone Anderson. He's got a few more title defenses to go before he reaches that record. But should he tie that record, then he will certainly take the number 1 spot. Masterclass performance, man. I can't describe it other than that. To have the same sequence happen in 2 fights and basically have the same result. The only reason why Alex didn't go out in the first one was because the bell rang while his bell was rang. But this time he didn't have that luxury. And I just think that speaks to how precise Israel Adesanya is and who he is as a martial artist and the caliber of martial artist or striker that he is, because that's hard to do. It's really hard to do. There's only like a handful of people I've actually ever seen do that on purpose, and one of them is Mighty Mouse. So, yeah, that was a great card up and down, man. And I'll go back to this. Izzy does say that the score is settled. That's not how scores work, but I'll give it to you. When people are giving it to me, like, yeah, it's 3-1. It's 3-1 between you and this person. That's basically what the argument is. And they're like, well, it's 1-1 for MMA. And I'm like, I guess if you want to like put it that way, that works that way. But between you and this man, he beat you 3 times. You beat him once. You know what I mean? So like, again, I just don't agree with that math. If you want to make the MMA argument, by all means. But it just, to me, it means I don't want to fight this guy again. And you know what? More people should say that, because, for Izzy, honestly, now that I think of it, Izzy has nothing but rematches right now. Whitaker on down. He's got rematches all the way down the top 5, unless it's Duplessis or Hamzat. And bro, I know he doesn't want to fight Hamzat. And I don't think that Hamzat should be rewarded for having never won a fight at 85 with a ranked opponent, or having lost, or not having lost, but having not made weight by such a horrendous amount in the last one. I don't think he should be rewarded for that. But as far as like new opponents, like, who else is there? Do you know what I mean? Like, he can't fight Robert Whitaker again. Well, he might, but that'll be 3. Pereira, that'll be 3 if he did that again. Let's see. It would be a rematch with what am I thinking of? If he did, has he fought Strickland? Maybe Strickland. Okay, so Strickland would be one, but that's not a fight that anybody wants to watch, if I'm totally honest with you. There's Duplessis, and I don't think he's ready. His cardio looked just poopy. Just not good. You know what I mean? Just not good in the last one. If it was me, maybe that's all of his fights, that he looks like he huffs and puffs really, really soon into fights. Like, I'm talking like 4 or 5 minutes into the first round, this guy's like, looks like he's dead. And like, that's just not going to be it. If you want to represent South Africa against the Nigerian, then you're going to have to come with more than that, because you can't not have cardio or gas in the first 4 minutes with a world champion, any world champion, particularly one that specializes in putting his strikes anywhere he'd like. So like, I just don't see anybody other than somebody with a super good wrestling pedigree really giving Izzy like anything. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like, I just don't, unless you're going to get somebody that's going to put, because Jan did it. And I'm not saying that they got great wrestling coaches over in Australia or in New Zealand. Let's just get that down. They have great wrestling coaches. So I'm not implying that Izzy can't wrestle. I'm saying that that's clearly his weak point, or has been in the past. And against somebody stylistically like Hamzat, that's kind of a nightmare for him. Do I believe that fight happens? No. Do I believe that it is far-fetched to say that Hamzat might get an opportunity at 185, given that he's a cash cow, given that he's popular? Absolutely. 100%. I believe that's feasible. And I think that people have to stop getting away, or start getting away from the fact that this is not about merit anymore. It's really not. And I'll give you an example. Colby's coming off of a loss, right? A loss, and he's getting a title shot, right? Let's see. Connor is almost guaranteed a title shot with a win against Michael Chandler at 170. Both of these men are not ranked at 170, nor is that their natural weight class. The only reason they're fighting at 170 is because they don't want to cut weight. That's not how that works. And the fact that Connor, if he should win against an oversized 155er, he's going to get a title shot against Leon Edwards. So if things like that can happen, right? When Connor literally has not won in 5 years over that at this point, then it's not far-fetched to say that without any wins at all, or a win against a nobody, right, that Hamzat gets a title shot. It's not out of the question. And if you've been paying attention to the UFC over the past few years, you'd know that that's true. But any of those 3 reasons I just gave you is a reason why it is not completely unheard of for us to see a poster with Izzy and Hamzat on it. You know, yeah, I just don't think that that's out of the realm of question. You know what I mean? I don't think that's like a thing that couldn't happen. Do I think it would happen right now? Maybe not. You know, but it's always in play. Hamzat is always in play right now until he gets flatlined. That guy's gonna be around. He's like the Dylan Danis of 185, a guy that just doesn't fight and talks like he's gonna kill everybody. And you know, for the most part, he does. But Gilbert definitely put him down a peg. But no, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that happens. So yeah, just wrapping up today. You know, we had a really good card. It was an amazing card last Saturday. And, you know, there was so much that went into it, and so many people put on so many good performances from the prelims on up. You know, I was shadowboxing at 2 a.m. Down in my living room, you know, just from being so hype. And, you know, there's been a lot of matchups like this, and the UFC is so interesting right now, and MMA in general is so interesting right now because there's so much new talent and so much talent that can be matched up with other great talent that is just collectively bringing us so many good fights, you know, so much great technique and different stuff. You know, it's just all been really good recently, and this last one was no pardon me, was no exception. Going back to the judging thing, that's really the biggest thing that I think we should really take stock in. Is really where I'm going with this. Is that modern judging is broken, and if we don't fix it, people are just going to keep getting screwed. You know what I mean? And I really do believe that we need to start. I don't know. I don't have an answer, but I do know that judges need to be held accountable for the shit that they're doing. Do you know what I mean? For the shit that they're not doing. Or, you know, are you paying attention? Or do you have any experience in martial arts? Nope. Get out. You know what I mean? Do you wrestle, kickbox, box? Do you do judo? Do you do Brazilian jiu-jitsu? Do you do any of those things? If none of those checks, then you shouldn't be a judge. Or you need to pass a test that proves to me that you're competent in this position. You need to know what this looks like and what you're looking at. And I feel like they don't. And it's not their jobs that's on the line. It's ours. As fighters, it's ours. And for us to have that responsibility of their incompetence be kind of deflected onto us is horseshit, man. That's horseshit. And you know, I just really truly believe that needs to get addressed, because these 30-27s that I mentioned today shouldn't have been that. Even though they were close fights, at least one of those fights, had they gone and been scored correctly, might have been a different result. And we see that a lot more and more. And, you know, every bad call there is, people just kind of go, and that's really the end of it. And I just don't think that that's true. I think that your job should be up for question. If you're consistently a bad judge, or you have a bad call and it's always you, or controversial call that always has you on the panel, then we know what the catalyst is, and we need to start to address that. And until we do, we're going to start seeing these stupid, shitty decisions by people that don't care about us, the fighters, our careers, as long as they go there, get a free seat to the fights, and they cash a check. And that shit is sick. And shame on you if you know who you are and you do that, because there's absolutely judges that do that. So that's really it for me today, guys. I had kind of a brain fart mid in there. I'm kind of obsessing about it, but you know, just a quick recap. You know, next week or in the weeks coming, I'm going to be working on, you know, graphics and more of an intro and, you know, whatever. But I really just wanted to get down to the nitty gritty of just talking about these cards and breaking down certain things and just looking it over, you know, just overall great night of fights. Really enjoyed it. Next week, or this week, pardon me, we'll have another great card lined up. I'm going to give you a preview on Friday for that. Until then, you know, keep smiling, keep laughing, keep causing chaos. This is Mr. J, the Joker parent from the Last Laugh podcast. Mind you, signing off. I will see you guys on Friday. Keep it classy.